And I'd like to break it down and talk about what it is and why it shows up, and then what you might do about it, and then talk about other things that wrap around it that could be of help to you. First of all, when you have regret, that feeling is because you have a perception that you did something that you wish you hadn't, or that you didn't do something you wish you had. And because you can go through commissions or omissions when you're judging yourself, because regret's a form of judgment of self. Now, if you had done something and you thought, oh, there'd be more advantages if I had done it, and I didn't do it, and then now I'm thinking there's more disadvantages because I didn't, you're going to feel regret. If you thought, well, if I hadn't have done it, I would have had more advantages, and now that I did it, I now have more disadvantages. Now you're going to have regret. So all of these are ratios of perceptions dealing with advantage and disadvantage. In actuality, everything that we experience bursts a pair of opposites. There's advantages and disadvantages to everything we do. In the Breakthrough Experience program that I teach literally just about every week, I show people this, and at first they're startled because they've been programmed by society, religions, politics, parents, etc., that certain things are good and bad, that they're morally that way and that's just the way it is. But that's not always the case, because sometimes you can have these things that you think are terrible, and later on you find out there's great blessings that come out of it and they turn out terrific, or vice versa. So inherently, things are neither good nor evil until we label them so. Neither advantage or disadvantage until we label them so. And when we are conscious of the upsides, the advantages, and unconscious of the downsides, we think one way, or if we're conscious of the downsides, the disadvantages, and unconscious of the upsides, we think the other way. But that's because we're not fully aware of both sides of each event. Now, let me give an example. Let's say that you thought you should have done something, which usually means that you've got an outside authority speaking to you. Anytime you hear yourself with imperatives, I've got to, I have to, I must, I should, I ought to, I'm supposed to, I need to do something, can pretty well guarantee that that's not your inner calling according to your own highest values whispering. That's some outside authority that you're comparing your daily actions to that you think you should have done. And whenever you try to live in other people's values, you set yourself up for feelings of regret, betrayal, you beat yourself up, self-depreciation, etc. We're not here to live in the shadows of others and live through other people's values necessarily. We're here to learn to live congruently with our own and do it in a way that then serves other people's values. That's the mastery. So anytime you expect yourself to do something and then you feel you didn't do it and you feel regret, it's because you assume that if you had done it, there'd be way more advantages if you'd done it. And now that you didn't do it, there's so many disadvantages. That's an imbalanced perspective. And if you also wish you had not done something, you did the same thing. Either way, you create these imbalances. So from a practical perspective, what do you do about that if you're feeling regret? The first thing you do is define clearly what you're regretting. You can't do nebulous things. You know, I have people come to me quite often and say, well, I have the fear, but I don't know what it's from. You cannot have fear without content in your mind. And so too, you cannot have regret without content in your mind. You can't regret nothing. You have to be regretting what the content of your mind is when you feel that feeling. You can't have that feeling without thoughts in your brain. So what you're doing is you're actually identifying, what are you feeling regretful about? Is it something you did too much of or something too little? Something you did do or didn't do? Commit, omit. First define that. Then ask yourself, what is it that you expected yourself to do? If you didn't do it, you would expect it, obviously, if I'd done it, life would have been more advantageous. Or if you did it and you thought, well, if I hadn't done it, it would have been more advantageous. So first to find out what you did or didn't do, then go to what you thought you should have done or wished you'd have done, and now go to that and ask, what would have been the drawback if I had done or not done the thing I thought I should have? And if you stack up the drawbacks and bring the drawbacks to balance the fantasies and benefits and unrealistic expectations about the advantages it would have provided, as you come up with the drawbacks and neutralize the supposed advantages and neutralize it, you're not going to regret it, because you're going to realize that there's just as many advantages of not doing it and enough disadvantages if you had done it. So what you do is if you had thought you should have done something, you assume there had been more advantages. If you didn't do it, you felt more disadvantages. So the way to solve that is to go and imagine, if you had done it, what would have been the drawbacks? And because you didn't do it, what were the advantages? the benefits. If you go and neutralize both poles of that and neutralize it, you end up actually feeling grateful. You feel love for yourself. You appreciate what you did because you realize that the only reason why you regret it is because you compared it to what you thought it should have been and you assumed there were more advantages. And that, by definition, the assumption where there's advantages without disadvantages is a fantasy. In some cases, delusional. And the idea that disadvantages without advantages is a nightmare. Those are simply polarities of perception, not balanced perceptions. But everything you do in life is going to birth pairs of opposites, both sides. So if you go in there and find the drawbacks of the way you thought it should have been and the benefits of what's actually there, and don't say, I don't know, I can't find it, there aren't any. Well, how could you say that? Go and be accountable, which means bring your brain into a balance sheet, and go find the disadvantages to what you thought the advantages if you had done this thing, and find the advantages of what you actually did. Or if you didn't do it, or did it, whatever side it is, go find the advantage and disadvantage and level the playing field for where you see there's both on both. When you do, you now have grounded yourself in what actually occurs. You know, people sometimes think, oh, I get in this new relationship, I'm infatuated with them, I'm conscious of the upsides, I'm not conscious of the downsides, I'm blinded by my infatuation. And then days, weeks, or months, you start in that relationship, you start discovering the downsides. And then you regret that you started pursuing that relationship because it's not what you thought. You had a fatal attraction. That's because you didn't take the time right from the beginning and look for both sides. If you look for both sides, you'd appreciate the person and understand that they're not one-sided. No one is. Everybody has a set of values, and whenever you support their values, they can be nice. When you challenge their values, they can be mean. And so when you get in a relationship, you're going to have both. You're not going to get one without the other. And there's going to be times when you're going to talk down and challenge people's values and talk up and support people's values. And it's to be expected, both of them. So anytime you have an expectation that's got all ups, no downs, you're setting yourself with that fantasy for feelings of regret and letdown. You may have heard me say to another Demartini that depression is a comparison of your current reality to a fantasy or an unrealistic expectation or some delusion you're holding on to. That you think that, oh, if I had this, I'd be way more advantages, disadvantages, and what I've got's got more disadvantages than advantages. So just like depression, regret is a little micro depression doing the same thing. So as you go through life, you're not going to get one-sided outcomes. And when you do that, you're subjectively biasing things, you're blind to the other side, you're unconscious of the ups or downs sides when you're seeing one-sidedness, and you're going to pay a price. You're going to have an unstable state of mind, you're going to be moving around and wobbling, you're not going to have certainty and poise and presence that comes from having a balanced mind. So if you're having regret, I encourage you to go and find out what you're feeling regret about, finding out if it was to be the way you thought it should be or wish it would be, what would be the drawbacks, and what's the benefits of what's actually occurring. If you do that and don't stop, you can literally neutralize that in a matter of minutes and all of a sudden be grateful for what you've done instead of carrying around regret. And if you do that, it'll help you manage money more effectively, because people that have regret and feel shame and beat themselves up and think they've made errors and things, they're constantly beating themselves down, they feel unworthy of receiving and holding on to opportunities in life. So take the time to go through and neutralize those so-called regrets. And if you'd like to have more mastery on that, come to the Breakthrough Experience. Every week in the Breakthrough Experience, I show people how to do that. I make them do that. I hold them accountable till they learn how to do it so they know how to do it the rest of their life. And I watch people every week in the Breakthrough Experience dissolve regrets, shames, guilts, prides, self-righteous perceptions that cause the projection. Anytime we puff ourselves up and get proud, we tend to project values onto people and set ourselves up for betrayal. Anytime we minimize ourselves because we've injected other people's values into our life and put false expectations on ourselves, we beat ourselves up. Regret is a feedback mechanism to guide us to have a balanced mind, to live by our own values, to not put fantasies and unrealistic delusions in front of our lives, which automatically create regret and self-depreciation. So I just want to share that. Please consider coming to the Breakthrough Experience, because I give you way more than what I can give you in a quick Demartini. I show you how to actually do it so you can master it for your life. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed our Demartini, and just know that regret doesn't have to be the thing that runs your life. You can master the ability to transform it into love and opportunity.